Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good, good, good. Is my sound okay? Yes, yes? All right, I'll take that down. We don't need coffee. Well, we always need coffee, but it's really a pleasure and an honor to be with all of you today. Thank you, Dr. Covert. Thank you to all of your teachers and administrators, and mostly, thank you to all of you for spending some time this morning thinking about a topic that is not such a pleasant one. And I want to say, what? Louder? Louder? Can you hear me now? I need to stand right into the mic, or maybe we can turn it up just a smidge without it going. Okay, is that better? All right, thank you. Thank you, Betty. I want to say one thing. So I'm going to talk for about a half an hour, and I want you thinking of questions, things that just irk you, that you don't understand, that don't make sense. That is okay. The way we learn is by asking questions, by thinking critically, by thinking about who I am, who's the person delivering this information to you, what am I showing you, what is missing, what do you want to look into more? So I want you thinking. I know Pineview students are always thinkers. I also want to acknowledge that there are many marginalized communities in society around the world, locally and around the world. And today we're going to be talking about the prejudice and hate against Jews. It's a long history. I'm not going to spend too much time on the history, but how we're seeing it today. And the reason why we're talking about this is not because it's the most important hate and other people's experiences aren't as important. It's just as important for you to sit here, hopefully someday, and be talking about the experiences of African Americans or Asian Americans or Latino Americans or LGBTQ Americans, right? There are many communities that are facing difficult times right now. And so it's important that we talk about the experience of American Jews today and historically, but I also want to acknowledge that this is not the only story that needs to be told. Okay, we're gonna get started. Here we go. First thing we're gonna do is a quick definition, and I know you guys are smart, so you know that anti-Semitism is hatred, bigotry, prejudice, discrimination against Jews, and behavior hostile to Jews because they're Jewish. Now, I'm gonna just pause for a quick second. I can talk and talk and talk a lot about this. I'm going to be moving quickly through some slides just to give you a taste. And all of this information I'm going to make available to your teachers, all of the sources, all of the videos. I'm going to make it all available for you guys to go back and really look at in a more, thoughtful, contemplative way. So we're going to be covering several things. Where does it surface? What does it look like? Why should we be concerned? And how can we address it? And it's in my nature to want to start with the history. Let's go back 3,000 years. But I'm not going to do that today because I get caught up in the history because I love history. I'm going to start with something much more contemporary, which is where we are seeing it today. First thing I'm going to talk about is social media. This is something familiar to all of you. I have no doubt that 99.9% of the people sitting in this room have a phone on them and check an app or two or five throughout the day. K-12 schools, college campuses. You're going to see a form of anti-Semitism on college campuses. Vandalism, propaganda, demonstrations, and sadly, physical attacks that are often deadly. All right. The study of anti-Semitism. This is from the CEO of the Center to Counter Digital Hate, which is a global organization that's tracking hate online. The study of anti-Semitism has taught us a lot of things. If you allow its space to grow, it will metastasize like a cancer. It's phenomenally resilient in society. Social media is where we are seeing the bulk of anti-Semitism today. It's a breeding ground for the growth and spread of conspiracy theories. And that's why we're going to start the conversation here, because even before. I'd love for you to know the whole history of anti-Semitism, but when you walk out of here, or even as you were walking in, chances are you have maybe seen something come through your social media feed that you wondered, that's a reference to the Holocaust, but I don't think they're talking about the Holocaust. Or that didn't sit with me right. I'm not sure exactly what I'm seeing. And this is where most people are interacting with anti-Semitism today on social media. Instagram, TikTok, I'm gonna put them all up here, all of your favorites, except for maybe that last one. That last one's a favorite of your parents and grandparents, right? There is research, and it's not new. I mean, we've been studying the impact of the internet for a generation already to understand the delivery of information, which is fascinating. It can be used for good. It can also be used for bad. So I'm going to be talking specifically about anti-Semitism on social media, and there have been some studies recently done where people would look at the posts on these different, these are like the 6 most popularly downloaded apps globally, right? They looked at the number of anti-Semitic posts, they reported it to each of the platforms, to Insta, TikTok, and then a year later, they went back to see if those posts, you know, and all of them said, oh, we've got it, we're taking care of it. A year later, in 2021, they found that no action was taken to remove 84% of anti-Semitic posts. Now, this is not me telling you that social media is awful and bad and you should, you know, get these apps off your phone. This is how we are living today. The reason why we're talking about this is so that your awareness, your eyes are opened to see things that maybe you've been scrolling by and seeing and not thinking anything of. Now, I want you to be able to stop, note it, and know what you want to do about it. Okay, so this is, there's a lot of text on this screen, give you something to read for a minute. You guys probably know this. It's the most downloaded app in the US and around the world. And researchers, specifically looking at TikTok alone, found that between 2020, 2021, the increase in posts, comments, and usernames, people using usernames in a TikTok account that is anti-Semitic, look at how they jumped. 41%, 900%, over 1,000% in 1 year. So even though TikTok may not be as big as Twitter globally, its huge user base, I mean, it's 1 billion people, means that even one post, even if the anti-Semitic posts are a small portion of what happens on TikTok, one post can be seen millions and millions of times. They've actually looked at one post of Jews being gassed in Auschwitz that was on TikTok, and it was accessed more than 6 million times in the course of 1 month. This is a magnet and a hotbed for violent and extremist content, and you're being exposed. Even if you're just, you know, because the logarithms, right, the algorithms, sorry, automatically send you more things. As soon as you tap on something, it forces more of that content into your feed. Gaming is the next area. Maybe you recognize some of these logos. It's likely, these are the top, I don't want to say, I mean, again, it's all in how we use it, right? But these are the games that keep coming up over and over again, where people are accessing or exposed to extremist ideologies, in particular anti-Semitism. So the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, I'm using a lot of their sources and research and studies, they showed that the increase in harassment that players are experiencing is at an all-time high. This is just gamers generally, harassment generally. Over 75% of all gamers experience some form of harassment. It's 3 out of 4. So if, you know, chances are you know someone who games, chances are they've experienced some form of harassment in these multiplayer online games. Jewish gamers experience the largest increase in the last year, jumping 12% up to 34%. Other minority communities also experienced this increase. Latino gamers and Muslim gamers and African American gamers. The largest jump was for Jewish gamers, and Jewish gamers experienced the most harassment, anti-Semitic harassment. And it's not just being exposed to anti-Semitism, it's being exposed to white supremacist ideologies, which more than doubled in 2022. So even if you're not harassed, you are being exposed to white supremacist ideology when you are gaming. And 15% of young people, which they call 10 to 17, ages 10 to 17, are exposed to white supremacist ideology while gaming. And why am I talking about this? I'm gonna get a little bit to this later. White supremacist ideology is fueled by anti-Semitism. It's buried deep in there. And you may say, how is that possible? Aren't Jews white? Not according to white supremacists. And this gets really complicated and very fascinating. Happy to do a deeper dive with any teachers that want to explore this in their classroom. But the anti-Semitism that fuels white supremacy is the thing that that radicalizes, and that has been referenced by people who have been radicalized. Okay, so what should you do? I'm just talking about when you are online. I'm assuming you guys have done some cyberbullying, anti-bullying, so none of this is gonna come as a surprise, but one thing you wanna make sure you don't do is respond if you are harassed. Now, I'm saying that, and there's gonna be a part of this talk which is you have to stand up, defend yourself, be an ally. But when you see it in social media, if you see something come through a feed, as soon as you engage, the algorithm is gonna push more of that same nasty content into your feed. So do not engage, do not respond. Don't share that post in any way. Report it. This takes a minute. And one of the resources I'm gonna share with your teachers is through the ADL, they've got a whole page where every single one of these apps and platforms, they show you exactly where, or they give you the link, how to report, where to do it, and how to follow up to see that it's been done. So it takes a minute to do it, but reporting it is really important. And then it's not just reporting it to the platforms, it's also finding an adult that you trust, a parent, a teacher, and talking about it there. Acting as an ally. So it's hard sometimes to know how to be an ally on social media. If you are feeling targeted and want to share that with your trusted family of social media friends, posting something on your feed, not reposting the nasty, and sharing your experience can help you feel supported and gives your friends and allies an opportunity to support you. So as an ally, you want to always take those things seriously as people's experiences differ greatly and need to be honored. And then finally, just get off the device, right? Stereotypes, tropes, myths. These are the things that have longevity over 3,000 years. I'm not gonna do really long slides on each one of these. I know you'll be very upset that I'm not gonna show you pictures from the Middle Ages that show how Christian anti-Judaism, which is the sort of birthplace of anti-Semitism as we know it today, and reigned supreme for close to 2,000 years. The idea that Jews killed God is a pretty significant one and forms the core of a lot of anti-Semitism that we see today. The blood libel, Jews were accused of killing children. This is again in the Middle Ages, and using their blood for ritual sacrifice. Things like being greedy or cheap, having control or power, dual loyalty. Again, there's a lot of history here. Jews were expelled. Jews have been expelled. Over history, Jews have been expelled from over 1,000 countries in the last 2,000 years. So every couple generations, maybe 100 years, Jews were forced out. They were forced to convert, they were killed, or they were forced to leave. And so they spoke a language that would allow them to speak to each other across the European continent, and they were always looked at as the other. Because who are they, where did they come from, they haven't been here very long. Well, they haven't been here very long because they were kicked out of the last country. So this idea that they're never really loyal to the place that they live is foundational for anti-Semitism even today. And as Dr. Covert talked about in the outset, all of this, the state of Florida has one of the strongest Holocaust education mandates in the country, and that's a good thing. And they just strengthened the statute this past year to extend to anti-Semitism more broadly than just the Holocaust, which is one reason why I'm here today. But understanding what denial is, and you can say, how could people deny it? The most well-documented genocide in history. Okay, the deniers are way off on the extreme, but distortion we are seeing on a regular basis. So again, it's called the longest hatred because it persists and mutates every place it is. It finds the language of the day to get a pass. So we can look back on the anti-Semitism of the Middle Ages and say, how could they think that? We can look back on the anti-Semitism of the 20th century, where they used race and science, the science, to argue that Jews weren't really human. How could they have believed that? How could they have used science so perversely to justify killing 6 million? We would never, so glad we're past that. But we know that anti-Semitism is resistant, and what is its permutation today? And today, I'll show some slides later, the individual Jew has been replaced by the Jewish state, the state of Israel. Forever the scapegoat. I talked about how Jews have always been the other. Whenever there is something wrong in society, people look for a reason why, rather than looking at maybe what's going on in their own society and thinking constructively or critically, why are we having an economic downturn? Why is there a plague? Why did we lose the war? The easiest thing and the most consistent thing to do over 2,000 years is find the scapegoat, which has been the Jews. And all of these, that whole list that I gave you, they're all based on a conspiracy theory. So there's a point at which you get, if you want to study this stuff and you say, why, how, help me understand this, there's going to be a point at which you have to suspend that desire to understand something rationally, because conspiracy theories are not based on anything factual. You have to be willing to go there and believe something that's not true. And that's why it's so hard to combat. I'm going to play 2 really short videos.
If you asked most Westerners today whether they oppose anti-Semitism, most would likely say yes. And yet, whenever something terrible happens in the world, it seems like it's only a matter of time before someone blames the Jews for it. No, seriously, those are all real. The problem is not just words. It's conspiracy theories that have deadly consequences, as massacres of Jews from Pittsburgh to Paris demonstrate.
At lunchtime today, a man armed with machine guns walked into this kosher supermarket and took more than a dozen people hostage.
The gunman was killed, but tragically so too were 4 of the hostages.
Far from fading away, anti-Jewish prejudice seems as resilient as ever. Didn't anti-Semitism go away after the Holocaust?
Jews will not replace us!
Apparently not. Yet a surprising number of people think that anti-Jewish bigotry was stamped out after the horrors of Nazi Germany. After all, didn't we make a bunch of Holocaust movies and get past this stuff? But while it's comforting to imagine that anti-Semitism largely disappeared after World War II, it's far from accurate. And if we make the mistake of reducing anti-Semitism to the Holocaust, its most extreme manifestation, we're likely to miss much of the problem today. That's because the Holocaust wasn't an anti-Semitic exception. It was anti-Semitism's culmination. The systematic murder of 6 million Jews across Europe didn't happen in a vacuum. It came after years of religious, scientific, cultural, and political anti-Semitism. For centuries, European Jews were barred from most professions, forcibly converted to other faiths, and subjected to murderous rampages, constant expulsions, and periodic inquisitions. In other words, the mass murder of European Jewry would not have been possible without many centuries of anti-Jewish ideas and assumptions. Take the Holocaust away, and you still have this massive anti-Semitic foundation underneath. In fact, we are still living with it.
So I've talked a little bit already about tropes, and like I said, I'm going to just spend 1 minute on Holocaust denial. So here we see, this is post-World War II. This is 1950s. Holocaust is a hoax. Holocaust is a lie. And this was spray painted on the side of a Seattle synagogue last year. Holocaust is fake history, and you see that the S's are in the dollar sign. Holocaust distortion, in many ways, is more concerning because it not only minimizes the actual Holocaust. So they say, okay, it happened, but was it so bad? But maybe the Jews are the ones who are actually perpetrating a Holocaust today, but maybe they talk about it too much just to get attention. So in this cartoon, you see a reference to Jerusalem and a wall being erected around it, and the front of that wall being the gateway to Auschwitz. And maybe you saw this sometime over the last couple years. People were choosing, as they have the right, to not take a COVID vaccine, but were wearing a Star of David, a yellow Star of David. It says, not vaccinated for COVID, as if the vaccine was somehow connected or at all comparable to the extermination of 6 million Jews, a vaccine meant to save lives. Another trope I want to spend just a minute on is this idea of the Great Replacement theory. Now, this may seem like a long time ago already to all of you, 2017, but it wasn't. And this is a moment where the anti-Semitism that has always existed, it's always been there, it's whether we're giving it room to grow, whether we are allowing it to be trafficked or stopping it. And we saw it in full display. There was a short video in the last video I showed of them chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And I remember thinking, how could they? And I study this stuff. And I hadn't learned about the Great Replacement theory as an anti-Semitic trope. The idea is that this small minority of Jews has so much power and is working so hard to control the world that Jews are the ones masterminding the influx of black and brown people into this country to replace the white race. And it's got deadly consequences. When you hear, sadly, about shooters and their manifestos, we see it over and over and over again. 11 Jews killed in a synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018. He went there because that Jewish community was supporting immigration reform and humane treatment of migrants at the borders. 31 Muslims were killed in New Zealand. The manifesto of the killer quoted the manifesto of the Pittsburgh killer. 6 months to the day after Pittsburgh, one Jew was murdered while praying in a synagogue in California. 22 Latinos were killed in an El Paso, Texas Walmart. Again, the Great Replacement theory. And most recently, 10 African Americans murdered at the Tops grocery store in Buffalo. So anti-Semitism does not just target Jews. It makes all of society less safe. Hate breeds hate. Now, I approved this slide with my high school daughters who said I absolutely had to share it because this is about as contemporary as it gets. If anyone was paying attention to what might have gone through your social media feeds just a couple months ago, maybe you know that Kanye West has now lost access to most social media platforms and all of his sponsors, from Adidas to, I think, I've got him listed here. So what did he do? He posted these anti-Semitic tropes. He shared these conspiracy theories. He went on a media tour alongside other well-known anti-Semites, talking about how he admired Hitler, exalting Hitler, people should stop dissing Nazis, and that he was going to be going DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. So, okay, it's Kanye West. Celebrities do sometimes not so smart, crazy things. What's the big deal? He's got a following on social media of more than 31 million people. That's twice the number of Jews on the planet. So when he posts this stuff, it actually has real-world consequences and an impact. And within days, and this wasn't just, this happens to be an overpass in LA, also happened in Florida, we saw white supremacists doing banner drops over highways, and that says, Kanye is right about the Jews. White supremacists and Kanye West, a black man, are in agreement on how they feel about the role of Jews in society today. Now, I'm going to add a couple more pictures to this slide because I also think we just need to take a minute and recognize what they are doing. The Heil Hitler salute. This too, sadly, in my 20 years of doing this, I have seen on students' social media feeds, kids thinking it's funny, it's just a joke. This is what it means. And this is Kanye's merch in 2024. You recognize anything there? He's got a swastika inside a Star of David on an American flag. The Yi-24, the 4 is at a slant and a swastika. You know, he argues that it's really just a Y and an E, but it's a swastika, and it's selling online. I'm going to share what I have seen from teens. Full disclosure, I've been in Florida for about 8 or 9 months. I did this work in Indiana for close to 20 years. I was able to amass, so the stuff I'm showing you, except for one picture, is from Jewish teens in Indianapolis, Indiana. My love burns for you like 6, and he said 6,000. That came through my nephew's social media feed on Valentine's Day. This was an 8th grader. Maya and her brother, who were named, just because you are Americans does not mean you belong in this country. You are Jewish. Jewish people do not belong. They are abominations. Get the hell out of this country. And that was sent to the entire school body. It was, I'm blanking on the name of the app that you can send it to like everybody who has that like airdrop. So that went viral within their school. This was an 8th grader. This was a different nephew of mine who reported a fake Finstagram whose title was something about Hitler. It was an anti-Semitic username. And they said, and I can read it better if I walk over there, they said, so the person on the left is the guy with the fake Finsta. Oh, and I didn't get some of it blocked off, sorry. Why'd you guys do that? Why'd you report it? It took a long time editing it, and now I can't get it back. You should have listened to us. We told you to take it down. I know, but it was just a joke. Well, it's not a joke. Well, my grandpa was German. He was a Nazi, so it's my heritage. So you're saying you want to be a Nazi? No, I'm saying it wasn't that big of a deal, just clowning. Yeah, but it is to us. These are our people you're talking about. I don't even know why I would change it. I don't even know you. Just take a joke. I can't when 6 million people of my people were killed. We just asked you to change the name of your account. Okay, so you're saying, I'm saying I think you missed your family reunion. It's pretty traumatic stuff for a young person to experience. And it's all just because it's a joke. No, it's not a joke. I am going to share one thing that I know happened in this community a few years ago. This was posted. These were some Riverview students that were playing Jews versus Nazi. Very quickly, trust me on the stats, it's not good. The numbers are higher than they've ever been. The numbers are higher than they've ever been, and they continue to go up. You see it sort of evened out for a minute during the pandemic and then jumped back up. Jews are the most targeted religious group in the US. This is a breakdown of the religion in the United States. This is where the Jewish community is, 2%. And this is the number of hate crimes that are committed against Jews in the United States. These two slides basically tell you that as bad as it is in the United States, it's worse in Florida. And here's a picture of a heat map where anti-Semitic incidents are taking place. Locally, 2020, 2 synagogues were tagged with anti-Semitic graffiti, somebody's home. They decided to burn a swastika. Jews are guilty was spray painted on the side of the Holocaust Museum. This was just in the past year and a half. And most recently, last summer, there were anti-Semitic flyers left in neighborhoods throughout Sarasota. In Florida, we've got demonstrations that turn violent outside of Disney World, Jacksonville, Tampa, Florida highways. This was most recently, this was in October after Kanye's post, and it was up on the building, Kanye was right about the Jews. Another overpass, Kanye was right about the Jews. And then finally, this was just a few weeks ago in Orlando, Jew just on the side of a building in Orlando. This is countrywide. I'm going to pause. The gentleman with the yellow thing on his chest, it says 6MWE. Anybody want to guess what 6MWE stands for? 6 million wasn't enough. And those last few are all just in the last few months. And 1 year ago, actually right around today, just over a year ago, hostages were taken in a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. All right, what can we do? This is where you say, all right, I'm ready. What can I do about it? This is a massive global problem. It's existed for 3,000 years. What can I as one person do about it? The first thing you can do is not wait until it gets bad. We need to recognize that stopping, even within ourselves, we all have biases. Recognizing the biases that we all have, fear of difference. And each one of these, I'm going to build a pyramid here. Each one of these has to sit on the other. Goes back to that video. So we don't get to the really bad stuff at the top of the pyramid if we take care to address the biases and the discrimination at the bottom. So biased attitudes allow and lead to acts of bias, which lead to discrimination. So an individual act of bias then becomes part of an institution, and then violence, and finally genocide. And if we don't want to see it get worse and worse and worse, it means that all of our engagement in stopping the attitudes and the acts of bias makes a difference and keeps us all safe. Being an upstander means you're choosing to act. You ask questions. Do you know what that means? Did you intend to be hurtful? It's a great way to deal, no matter who's being targeted as an ally or if it's you, to stop it right there and say, why did you say that? I'm just curious. Do you know what that means? That was hurtful. Sometimes that's enough to interrupt racism and anti-Semitism. You're choosing to be an upstander because choosing to do nothing, a bystander, implies agreement. And you are going to act in a way that models to your friends, to your family, that you are willing to be an upstander. Lead your life by example. Learning, seeking out sources that you can trust, lots of different sources to understand what you're seeing. As I said, asking questions, question false portrayals of the past, and always think before you share. And standing up and speaking out is critical. We don't want to ignore any expression of hate, question, interrupt, work within your own community. It's easy sometimes to call out the haters with whom you already disagree with. We know which side of an issue we're on or not on, and I'm going to disagree with the people who I disagree with. So they're the ones who are hateful. Hate exists in every community. It does. No community is immune. And it's actually more constructive if you think about how you're hearing it within your own groups, maybe within your own family, within your own neighborhoods, and calling it out within your own community. That's actually where the most change is going to happen. Because when you hear someone criticize you, and someone you disagree with, you automatically dismiss it anyway. But if you have somebody that you're closer with tell you, I don't know if you realized it, but that word that you used was actually offensive, you're going to say, oh my God, teach me, help me understand when it comes. So connecting with your family is really important. All right, last. This is 1 minute, and then we're going to call it.
You've been there. You saw that offensive meme depicting a cunning Jew being shared around. You sat in the room when someone made a joke about the greediness of Jews. You've heard someone on the news talking about certain groups having too much power. You've been judged and rejected for speaking out on Israel's right to exist and live in peace. We're used to thinking about anti-Semitism as unhinged violence, but here's the underlying truth. Today's anti-Semitism is growing under the radar, prospering in social media, where many, knowingly and unknowingly, spread small crumbs of darkness. Yet it is still Jew hate. Simply put, baseless hatred that is internalized all around us. The spreading and growing of anti-Semitism, including the denial of the Jewish people's right to manifest their nationality in the state of Israel, is based on false tropes and stereotypes that feed on fears. It's dangerous and leads to hatred, bias, violence, and intolerance that goes far beyond targeting Jews alone. We can't be the ones allowing this darkness to spread. When in a group of people, listen to what others or even yourself might be saying. Before you share something online, pay attention to the content. What starts as a burden for Jews quickly becomes a dark cloud over all of us. The darkness of anti-Semitism, the baseless hatred of Jews, only dissolves when you shine a light on it. You're the one who can call it out. You're the one who can change the conversation. Together, we can make a difference and dispel the darkness of hate. Join us at shinealighton.com and stand up for what's right. Shine your light on anti-Semitism and Jew hate and share that light with all you know.
I went over just a little bit, so we don't have a ton of time for Q&A, but I hope you've been thinking, and I'd love to take a couple questions, couple thoughts. Yes, please. Yes. And I will, stand up and project.
All right, I have two questions. So, is it okay when, Jewish people use anti-Semitic slurs the same way that African Americans use racial slurs?
Oh, God, that's such an important question. Thank you. The question is, what if Jews are using anti-Semitic slurs? Do they get a pass? And I say no. I think it's as problematic, if not more. And there is no community that's immune, right? Within the Jewish community, there are people who minimize and tell jokes, and I think it's as harmful as anybody else, if not more. There are people in the Jewish community who are xenophobic, who are anti-immigrant, who are right? Every community has its extremists and haters and those who will minimize the impact of words, even within the Jewish community, and I think it's as problematic, if not more.
And then
So the question is about what's the connection with money, basically, right? On one foot. Remember the feudal triangle that you learned about the Middle Ages? You had the kings and the lords and the serfs and then the peasants, right? Jews were not allowed anywhere in that. Jews were not allowed to own land. And Jews, by the way, had different dietary laws and had different language. And Christians, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church outlawed usury, outlawed lending money, and forced Jews to be the money lenders. And so at every port and every town, there was a Jewish money lender by decree by the Lord or the king. And so whether they were on a ship traveling, there was going to be a Jew placed on a ship to end up at a port to talk to another Jew that would be sent there by the king, and they would exchange the goods and they would exchange the money. And so Jews were initially forced in and not allowed to own land or till the land or do anything else. So unfortunately, the history there is right there. And it plays also into this idea of control. You know, who owns the banks, whether it's controlling the banks, the media, Hollywood, this idea of a conspiracy theory where Jews are the master puppeteers trying to control the world, and money is a big part of that.
I have a follow-up question, I guess, kind of. There's like statistics too about like Jews having higher salaries after citizenship.
So this is where we need to be, sort of careful. A higher salary, look, first of all, what was the study? What are they looking at? What else are you looking at? For people who say, listen, I've got friends who are Jewish. I'm not being anti-Semitic. I'm just really curious. Why are there so many Jews in Hollywood? So to say why suggests that there must be some reason other than an interest, right? Why are there so many Jewish lawyers or bankers or there must be something beyond my rational understanding which lends it to this idea of a conspiracy of Jewish control. So I'd have to look at the study that you looked at to see what are they actually controlling for and trying to say. And are they saying that Jews get paid more than the average person? There's probably something there that is pointing at Jews as an explanation to something that they don't want to understand on a factual, rational basis. Those are really important questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions. Thank you, Ms. Mintz.